Hello and welcome back to Language Culture and Dr. Lou. And today, this video is all about a question of pronunciation. How does the White House press secretary say the president's last name? Is she saying President Trump or is she saying President Chump? And so I started noticing this back in January when the Trump administration 2.0 uh, came into power. And this was really funny. I was wondering, why is nobody else really noticing this? Why are no late night comedians making fun of this? I don't know. But on the other hand, she's not just to be um, mocked or anything, because in one sense, Carolyn Levitt being the White House press secretary is impressive, especially because she is the very youngest White House press secretary in history. So good for her for at such a young age, already ascending to this level. But the thing is, it's kind of funny to me that I keep hearing her say President Trump because that's her boss that we're talking about, right? That's the president of the United States and her boss. And we know in the past from his first administration, and of course from his reality shows, that he has a propensity to fire people and throw them under the bus and whatnot. But so far, that hasn't been a problem for her, as far as I can tell. But still, I'm wondering, is this at all my bias, or is he actually saying President Trump? How often? So I wanted to do a little sort of pilot study, if you will, to see how often she's saying President Trump versus President Trump. And I found a perfect little montage on another YouTube channel where she's saying this name, her boss's last name, 20 different times. These are 20 different instances of them finding of um, her saying his name on different occasions, but they're all gonna come really quickly together because um, because again, it's a little video montage, and so we're going to hear it pretty closely together. So let's take a listen a couple times to make sure that we get her um, voice and her pronunciation perfectly, because we're going to be listening for how many times out of 20 does she say chump. And so this is from the Luke Beasley channel. As you can see here, it's another channel on YouTube, very successful channel with more than 1.3 million subscribers so far and counting. And so again, the producer who put this together, his name is Cole. So let's take our first listen through this. And if there are any technical difficulties, we'll listen again and again. But even without any technical difficulties, I want to listen to this at least 3 times altogether so we can make sure we get lots of chances to hear. So let's go and listen close. It will be quick. And so we're listening to see how often, how many times out of 20 does she say President Trump?
President Trump, 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 Trump administration, President Trump, 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 President Trump.
See what I mean? That was really quick. That's why I wanted to make sure we go through this a couple times. So by the way, that is Luke Beasley, the guy, the young man you're seeing on the screen right now. And his producer, one of his producers, Cole, I think, put this together. And so let's take a second listen through it. I'm glad that so far It's working well. So second listen through.
President Trump, 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 Trump administration, President Trump, 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 President Trump.
In a perilous time.
Wow. So I'm pretty sure I heard her say Trump with an R only a couple times throughout the whole thing, and a majority of the time I'm talking, most of the time it's Chump. So let's take one final listen through to see, just to confirm how many times she's saying Chump.
President Trump, 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 Trump administration, President Trump, 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 President Trump.
In a perilous time.
Wow. So that's a lot. And so let's get back to our little analysis here. Get back to this from the same spot where we started, where we left off rather. Okay, so the question was, how many times out of 20 is she saying chump? And how many times is she saying Trump? So far, my last count after the last 3 listenings, I heard only 3 instances of Trump with a well-articulated R in it, and 17 instances of chump. Now I'm only putting approximately equals because this is just the beginning. This is just, yeah, just the beginning. And I was thinking of slowing it down so we could really hear, but I decided not to because that wouldn't reflect how it sounds in real life when she's speaking at normal speed. And this was, yeah, this was a good way to judge that. And so, yeah, 85% chump to only 15% Trump. That's the tally anyway that I've got. Well, the percentages out of the tally. And so what's the conclusion? That most of the time, Carolyn Levitt, the White House press secretary, is saying President Trump. And that's, yeah, that's really funny to me, that she's all saying it because she still has her job, right? And I wonder if it's possible that he has just never noticed this going on. I don't know. That's interesting. And what's really funny to me now that I know that she's overwhelmingly saying President Trump, that kind of makes that one an acceptable pronunciation for the rest of us, right? Because if the White House press secretary is saying President Trump, that must not be so terrible. It must be suitable, right? So, yeah, I hope you enjoyed this little study. And yeah, and if you're having a hard time pronouncing his last name and you tend to just say Chump, don't worry about it. You're in good company with the White House press secretary. So please do give this video a thumbs up. I would appreciate that so much. And please do subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed yet. It's free and it goes really far, and I would appreciate it very much. And so I will get hard at work on my next video. And so I hope to see you around then. And until then, yeah, catch you around next time. Bye-bye.